episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. I am Dr. Erin McKinley, and today we have another awesome spotlight session with Dr. Donna Burnett from the Auburn University Masters of Science in Nutrition Non-Thesis with Dietetic Internship program based in Auburn, Alabama. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so to start us off, tell us a little bit about your background and how you landed at Auburn.
Okay, well, it's been a long journey getting to Auburn. It all started ages ago in the disco era when I was a student at the University of Alabama, and I completed the coordinated program back in the 70s there. From there, I began my career as a registered dietitian and worked in hospitals in the Birmingham, Alabama area. I also covered some nursing homes and did that for, I guess, about 20 years. And then I decided it was time to go back to school. I went back and did a master's. I did a master's in education and a master's in nutrition as well at UAB. I went ahead and was recruited into the PhD program at UAB, so I went ahead and did that, not really knowing where that would lead, but just deciding that would be a fantastic opportunity to just to improve my knowledge and go through that experience. So I did that and was immediately put to work teaching at UAB as an adjunct. And from there I went to, I got hired at the University of Montevallo in Alabama. And my children were in college at Montevallo at that time, and they were getting free tuition. So I stayed there, getting my feet wet and helping my kids. And then I was just curious about what else I could do because I had never been able to really leave the area with my kids underfoot and then in their own college experiences at Montevallo. So I decided to go out to Texas and work at Baylor. So I worked at Baylor and taught there as an assistant professor for a couple years. Of course, I got homesick and wanted to come back east. So I ended up at Georgia Southern University where I started the dietetic internship there. Also, I'll mention that my first job at Montevallo in higher ed, I was the DPD director. And then at Baylor, I backed up the DPD director when she got sick and took them through their accreditation. So by the time I was finished at Georgia Southern, I had completed 3 Ascend accreditation visits and wrote all their self-studies. And yet that job was not a tenure track position, so I thought I had one more move in me to get closer to home, back to my family and into my own house. And so I did it, and I'm at Auburn now on a tenure track position. I'm going up for tenure next year, so hopefully that will go well. And that's how I ended up at Auburn.
All right. And we were just talking about before we started recording today that Donna and I are life degree twins. Both did the coordinated program at Alabama, both did UAB and UAB's PhD programs. We did not know that we had followed in each other, or I followed in her footsteps.
We did not know that we were twins.
All right. Well, tell us all about Auburn's program.
Okay. Well, we started as an ISPE. Some of you may know that. And for about 5 years, we ran an ISPE. I wasn't there at the time all that started, and it came on the heels of the master's degree in nutrition. And they were just, there was nothing in Southeast Alabama for internships. They thought that whoever was the powers that be at the time thought, well, maybe we'll try an ISPE, we'll connect it to the master's degree because that's going to have to happen eventually anyway. And so they started that and ran it for probably about 3 years or so before I got to Auburn. And so I was hired at Auburn for the purpose of developing the dietetic internship. Since I had successfully done that at Georgia Southern and had passed 2 other accreditations, they thought I might be able to do it. So we did. So I worked on that, and so we got our candidacy accreditation in June of 2019 and grandfathered in the ISB students. And at that point, it was too late to go through the match since it was June. And so we kind of had a sparse class the next year because we really had to just take students that were at Auburn already, getting ready to do their internships because we have a DPD there too. So this spring will be our first, the spring of 2020 was our first real recruiting effort for our internship. All of that said, there's really not a whole lot different than when we ran an ISB. I guess the main difference is that we dropped our clinical concentration upon a SENS recommendation since we don't have a major medical center in Auburn or Opelika, and we were having to send students a bit out, which is fine. It's within our radius for their required clinical rotations, but just felt like that we didn't quite have the resources we needed to promote concentration. So all of this, as you will know, if you don't by now, all internships have to offer clinical, community, and food service management. So we do equip our students in clinical, but it's not our concentration. Part of that also is Auburn's a land-grant university, and so we're really focused on community nutrition and outreach and serving the population of Alabama. And so it just seemed very logical that we would drop the clinical and really focus and develop our community nutrition, public health and community nutrition concentration. So that's sort of where we start, and I'm going to just walk you through how we have developed the program. And of course, jot down any questions or put them in the chat for Erin, and she can help me to answer those because it's hard to read the chat at the same time when you're talking. All right, so let's get started here. Let's see here. I'm going to find my little arrows. All right, so just Auburn in general, it's a pretty big university, 30,737 this academic year. You see our students' admission test scores. We have a 50-50 male to female ratio and 20 students per faculty across the campus. What I think is our most fabulous prestige, I guess you would call it, accolade would be that the Princeton Review ranked Auburn #1 in the nation for colleges with the happiest students in 2019. And part of that's because the faculty's happy. It's a lovely place to work, and the students are fantastic. And so for the most part, we have very happy students. And this is some of why they're get a little crazy with their toilet paper rolling. I have not done that yet since I've been there. Maybe someday I will. But this is how Auburn students celebrate sports wins. They roll the oak trees with toilet paper. And they do this in Tumor's Corner. Well, here's the bottom right on my screen is Tumor's Corner when it's not full of people in toilet paper. And then on the left is just an overall view of the campus. It's a lovely campus. The trees are nice, and they've done a good job of making the university very pretty. So drilling down a little bit to our college, we're in the College of Human Sciences in the Department of Nutrition, Dietetics, and Hospitality Management. Our mission is to prepare competent and professionally engaged entry-level registered dietitian nutritionists who improve human health and well-being through service and positions in nutrition and dietetics and related fields. So if you notice there, we pull in overall health and well-being. As Erin describe that we both have the same PhD, and that is in health education and health promotion. And so, it's good to recognize that nutrition is part of health. It's not everything, but it's very, very important. I would say it's one of the core elements, but it's good when you can think broader and more broadly about health. So we definitely advocate health, the overall health of the individual. We just ran an ad just to start attracting students to our program. It's interesting, as an ISPE, we were in high demand in second round match because there were fewer schools and a lot more students who were still pretty, seriously trying to find an internship. And once we shifted to the internship, now we're in the same first round with all the other universities, but a lot of people don't even know we have an internship yet. So if you like Auburn, it's a good time to get in because it's not there are not a ton of students applying yet. And so we have been able to take everybody that wanted to get in up to this point that had the minimum qualifications. And that makes me feel really good. It's typical 1,200 hours. Right now, Ascend is letting us do a few less, about 1,000 because of COVID, but normally it would be 1,200 hours in the field. And I'll explain how the rest of the program works, but you do get a lot of intense coursework in the area of nutrition, along with your supervised practice. So speaking of which, this shows you our curriculum. This is the MS Nutrition Non-Thesis with Dietetic Internship curriculum. We have condensed this to 5 semesters, and in that time you will accrue 34 credit hours and come out knowing a lot about nutrition. When you're looking at programs, notice the MS part of it. Are they going with a clinical nutrition curriculum where you take, advanced MNT, advanced food service, advanced, all your your DPD courses at an advanced level, versus the nutrition science focus, which is what this is. You'll notice that you don't take any of those DPD courses again, which you may want to. But this is a science-based curriculum, and the students that come out of it and take the RD exam write me back and say, wow, I'm really glad that I learned all that, because there's a lot of nutrition on the RD exam. So your first semester, you're taking some of the core courses, minerals and metabolism. Second semester, vitamins and micronutrients. All along, you're taking research methods, preparing you for you're getting prepared for your non-thesis research, but you're in the same classes with all the master's students, and some of them are doing a thesis option. So there's going to be, and plus, you're coming out with an MS degree, and you need to have some research training in that. So then the first summer is where you start in the field. Now, up to this point, all of your courses had grades, letter grades. And you have to have a 3.0 before you can get into the practicum, which is the supervised practice. And that's because from there on out, you don't get letter grades. So if you don't have a 3.0 by then, you won't ever graduate, because Auburn requires a 3.0 to graduate from the graduate school. So normally that's not a problem. Occasionally somebody doesn't study very well. They aren't really prepared for the level of study, and so they might have to remediate that summer. And if so, I let people do some community nutrition to get some hours under their belt and then finish up, and they're not behind at that point. So there's a lot of things we do in the summer that could be done and then still counted, assuming the person does complete the program. So far, we've only had one person who had personal problems to the point where she couldn't even finish graduate school yet. So we're still hoping that she'll come back. But, it happens sometimes. People have emergencies and family problems sometimes. So we're there for our students. We, are trying to help and get everybody through. Our goal is to get everybody through the program. Okay, so then while you're doing your practicum in summer, fall, and spring, graduating in the spring, while you're doing that, you're also working on your non-thesis research, which I will go into depth about that in a slide or two. Okay, and then you take a seminar where it's sort of to prepare you for your non-thesis presentation, and it's a mini research paper and presentation just to help you prepare. Okay, when you get into your supervised practice, this is just copied and pasted out of the student handbook. These are our rotations. Talk more about them as we go, but the hours are here. And these are not done in any particular order. In fact, we have to rotate students around to use the same preceptors for multiple students. So you're not going through it all together as a cohort in the sense that you're not in the same rotations at the same time with all your classmates. And so the community concentration, it's at the end, but sometimes it turns out that students do that a little bit before the end if they have a really great opportunity. We don't want to lose that. So that can be done sooner, but normally students do that at the end where they select their own option for their community concentration. Okay, some examples we have for the nutrition research. Actually, let me go back and just run that down. So you got nutrition research, you have food service, institutional, more retail, like cafeteria based, and then inpatient. You have MNT1, MNT2, renal for a week, outpatient MNT, and then we start with the community. Actually, like I said, it's no particular order, so this sometimes happens sooner, but so community, child and adolescent nutrition education, then more broad community nutrition, sometimes through extension and outreach. They're able to take students right now, so we're using them too. And then the community concentration. We do have a 2-week orientation. 1 week is done on campus, the other week is done on Zoom. And assuming that we're allowed to meet, which hopefully we'll all be able to get back to in person, that first week is, it's usually the first full week after the summer semester starts, and it's on campus. And I try to work it out where you only have to stay in Auburn a minimum amount. So you come in Monday noon, and you get excused Friday noon. So you can minimize how many nights you have to stay in a hotel. Okay, so some of the examples for nutrition research, we have a lot of research going on at Auburn. And so as you have finished your core courses, you've made contacts with all the professors if you're on campus. If you're a distance student, you may know someone back at your university or anywhere that you can work alongside a current researcher. If not, we can also do distance with Auburn professors too. So I do a lot of I don't do bench science research. So what I do typically can be done with some online components. So, sometimes I'll be the mentor for that or the preceptor, but a lot of times students have connections back with their undergrad program wherever they live, and they work alongside a professor they already know. Or it could be a hospital research project, or a lot of options. Institutional food service or retail. This can be done in cafeterias, in hospitals or schools, any place that's open to the public or they're marketing food for sale. And then the inpatient food service would have to do with a residential facility whereas patients are spending the night. And that's just because there's a difference when you're responsible for 24 hours of nutritional intake versus you're just serving lunch or one meal to someone. So there's a difference there. Okay, then MNT1, this can be done in acute care, can be done in long-term care, rehabilitation, anywhere where they're actually doing MNT. But MNT2 has to be in acute care where they're doing enteral and parenteral nutrition. So you get that experience. That happens to be the hospital in Opelika, EAMC, East Alabama Medical Center, where we send students or on-campus students. 4 students get to go there. And then outpatient MNT, if it's an on-campus student, we have a lot of opportunities. We have the Health and Wellness Center at the university. We have the Diabetes Center at EAMC. There's several places that can be done. There's an eating disorder dietitian on campus. And then, anywhere where there's hospital clinics or you have access to outpatients. Then community child adolescent nutrition education. We help a lot of summer camps. We write curriculum for summer camps for nutrition education. We're actually involved in a project right now where the summer students from last summer filmed nutrition lessons because they couldn't go in person, and so they were doing cooking demonstrations and all kinds of fun videos they made. And so that's how we kept up with the summer camps. But normally they go to the summer camps. Now, if you're a distance student, you get to. This is not set in stone. We can work with you on what's available in your area. But this is what they do at Auburn when they're on campus. So then we have the community nutrition, which isn't aimed at child or adolescent. We have a lot of nutrition going on at Auburn. We have Hunger Solutions, which is the only institute in the country, I believe, that does what they do, where it's all networked to try to make sure people have food to eat. That's actually, if you want to know more about that, you can go on Auburn's website. We don't run that, but they precept our students over there. Right now, they're compiling a database of all the places where you can buy food to try to help people in food deserts. Campus Kitchen is a nationally recognized program where students volunteer to go out and collect food from places that have leftovers, like Golden Corral and Campus Dining, and they keep it under food safety requirements so that it can be repurposed, repackaged, and sent out to people who don't have food in the Auburn area, including Meals on Wheels. And it's phenomenal how many tons of food they move. And our students practically run that in the summer because all the regular students go home for the summer. We have the regional food bank in Auburn that works for our whole region. Of course, the schools, extension, and then any number of outreach opportunities. Pharmacy goes out. Several of the other health professions go out, and depending on what students are interested in, they can dovetail with that. And then the community concentration is students' choice. And for our purposes, we consider community nutrition anything related to ambulatory people. So if you really like clinical and you want more experience with nutrition education or counseling, if you go to an ambulatory clinic, you can count that as community. That's one way that you can get more clinical in there. Some of it is overlapping. And also, we've had several students that wanted to work in sports nutrition, and that's essentially wellness. So we let them count that either as food service or community education, nutrition education, because they are educating the players. And we've placed several students We have one at Rutgers. She's the director of sports nutrition. We have one at who works for the Toronto Blue Jays and the New Orleans Pelicans. I think they have the Pelicans. And then we have somebody who landed, let's see, another sports nutrition person. I'm trying to think she's at the University of Tennessee. So that's how we work in sports. So anything that's not medical nutrition therapy, if it has to do with teaching, nutrition, or wellness, we can pull that into community. Okay, almost done. So here is our schedule of tuition and fees. And one thing I'll point out, if you notice the totals here, look which one is the lowest. It's distance students. So they're actually paying less tuition than residents of Alabama on campus. Everybody pays the same amount for the 9 credits of the Dietetic Internship, but then the other 25 hours, that's charged by the university at rates for the resident or non-resident or distance. So we don't control that. And then our various costs, these are estimates as best as we could estimate. So we do try to get students to go to the state meeting and present research, whatever state you're in. And if you can't do that, that's okay. That's just optional. But we do want you to get involved with your local dietetics association and join that. Of course, you have to join the academy. And then, some of the other things, if you have health insurance, you can waive that. You don't have to go to Fancy, but we encourage you to for networking. And you do pay for your own background check and drug screens. These are just some of our places that we send students. I showed you EAMC already. That's another view. That is Baptist Medical Center. We use Montgomery for the medical center since we don't have one in Auburn. We have a 60-mile radius around Auburn where we send students. So we send people to Montgomery, and we send people to LaGrange, Georgia, to the WellStar system, which is exceptional. There's a few other places that we can send for MNT1, but MNT2, for those 5 weeks, you have to go to somewhere doing parenteral and enteral nutrition. And then also Fresenius kidney care. This happens to be the Diabetes and Nutrition Center. They call it DANCE, and that's related to Alabama Medical Center. That's a really, really high-level program they have running there that's very beneficial to students. Then Auburn City Schools, Alabama Department of Public Health, and WIC. The dining halls at Auburn are run by Aramark, and we have a dietitian with Aramark that's hired by Aramark, but she precepts our students and loves to precept our students. And so they get a really good experience in their retail food service if they do it with her, since she's a registered dietitian. We have Asthma Camp Eagle, there's Tiger Camp, there's other summer camps. So what are the minimum requirements? Well, first of all, we have 8 on-campus seats and 8 distance seats. That's a total of 16. We take 3 pre-select students, which so far no one has used their pre-select seat because Auburn students are very highly qualified. They end up all over the place. But I think this year they might use their seats, but who knows? They tell me they're going to, and then they don't, but that's okay because I make them tell me by mid-January. And so if they don't claim their seats, then they can just apply like everybody else. So what we need you to have is a DPD verification statement that's current. And the reason for that is the curriculum and the curriculum for these programs change because the exam changes. Every 5 years, they do a audit and change something about the exam, then the curriculum has to keep up. So if you have an old verification statement, you may not have the current information you need. For the Auburn Graduate School, they want you to have a GPA of 3.0, and then we want a DPD GPA of 3.2. You have to have a C or better in all your DPD courses and your science courses, because this is a science intense program. You have to be eligible for admission to the Auburn University Grad School, which essentially, if you have what I just said on the above, you would be. Now, sometimes because of COVID, they didn't require the GRE. I'm not sure if they've gone back yet. They're looking for around a 300 on the GRE. That's not written down anywhere, because if you have a really high GPA, then we can fudge a little on the GRE. We need your resume and your transcripts, and then 3 letters of recommendation and your personal statement, pretty much like everybody else. Okay, now I'm going to just talk for a minute about the non-thesis research. From doing these videos and interviews and presentations, I've noticed that students are really concerned about that. Like, what is it? So for probably everywhere that you would see this, it's generally this, but specifically at Auburn, what we want you to do, you're not doing primary research. So we want you to identify a research question that has been studied by somebody and published. And it needs to be a topic where there's at least 10 primary research studies that are reported in the literature. So you identify a research question, example, is there a statistically significant correlation between vitamin D intake and hip fractures? Okay, so you have to find 10 research studies where they studied that. It's primary research, and the outcome variables would be that the hip fractures. And the vitamin D intake correlation, you don't do a meta-analysis. You're not recrunching numbers, but you're reporting on the 10 studies. Given the constraints of those studies, is there a correlation? Let's say 8 say yes and 2 say no. Then as a grad student, you should be able to analyze those studies to see, why is there a difference? Is it a different population? Is it a different dose? Is it different timing? Are there other limiting factors? In your opinion, as a grad student, why are you seeing different outcomes? And then at the end of it, what is your assessment of how would you answer that research question by using these other studies? Okay, then you turn in a paper. There's no certain page length. I've seen them all the way from 18 pages, which it would take to actually do this, up to 30 pages. Somebody got carried away. And then you have a major professor. You select one after you take the core courses. Then you get to know everybody, and you choose your major professor and a topic. They approve it. And then you work with your major professor. When you get close to graduation, you ask 2 more people to be on your committee. And then at the end of your program, you present your non-thesis research to your committee, and that constitutes your oral examination. No one's ever failed it, to my knowledge. Finally, my last slide, I think this is my last one. Some students who either started as distance students or they started as on-campus students, you've already done 34 hours out of the 60 hours required for the PhD in nutrition. You've already done the hard courses. You're in there with the PhD students taking those 4 core courses. If you get through that, and then you do your internship, and you want to come back, or either if you're a distance student, maybe you decide, hey, I'm going to go to Auburn for a couple years. All you have to do at that point is finish the 60 hours. And I think there's a few electives that are required in that, but you're basically coming back to do your research and dissertation. So it's a very compact program and streamlined. And because of that, there's a lot of overlap in what you can do with it. Okay, so that's a really great option. We love our PhD students. We have quite a few, and a good number were our master's students who stayed at Auburn to do their PhD. So this is my contact information. We made up a little shortcut, aub.ie, because Albie's our mascot. If you go to your web browser and type in aub.ie/diet intern, it's a shortcut to our web page. And then you can reach me by email at internship@auburn.edu. And there's my telephone number. That number, we're all working from home right now. That phone number goes to my office, but my office phone records my messages and sends it to my email so I don't miss any messages. So you can use that number. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything I have. And so I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that overview. I'm going to jump right into the 5 questions that I ask every director that comes on the podcast. And these questions were put together with the help of LSU students. I reached out to really see what they wanted to know from directors, and that's how we compiled these. So the first question is, what is one thing that you just love to see when you're reading a personal statement?
Okay. Well, what I actually am looking for is some mature writing. When someone starts out, I always wanted to be a dietitian because my Nana had diabetes. Well, that might be true, but I'm looking for a little bit more sophisticated writing because it is a master's degree and you have to write. And so I spend a lot of time coaching the Auburn students in their writing. I look for people who have had the level of thought to go out and look at the Auburn program and start out their letter with something that lets me know that they've checked this to see if it's really a good fit. Because if it's not a good fit, you don't want to do it anywhere. So are you just looking for an internship because you need one? Or have you really looked at the program to examine whether it's a good fit for you with your goals? And because it's pretty heavy in science, that's really important. And also we're in a rural area. And I've already said that you have to drive a little bit to get some of your clinical. So, I'm just looking for people who really know what they're getting into and reflect that in their statement. I also know that you can't write different statements for every university. So it doesn't have to be totally tailored to Auburn, but it needs to be tailored somehow to the profession where you've thought about how you fit with the profession. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's hard to explain that, but after you read a lot of personal statements, some of them do stand out with the person's writing ability.
So my second question is a true or false question.
Oh, no.
And it's true or false, an applicant's resume should be 1 page and 1 page only, and either way, why?
Oh, in academia, we have CVs anyway. And so a CV, the longer, the better. So, this is a master's program. I want to know everything you want to tell me. And if you've already started a CV and it's going to be several pages, that I'd like to see that. I'm not sure every program would feel that. You're not applying for a job per se. You are in a sense, but you're applying for a position. But this is academia. And so there's no reason that you have to limit yourself to 1 page, in my opinion.
So what is one thing that an applicant may do that you look at as maybe a red flag or maybe a total deal breaker, either in their application or in some sort of encounter with a potential applicant where you feel this person might not be the best fit for our program?
I haven't had to eliminate anybody based on any interviews. Although at a different university, I got a recommendation letter from someone who basically said, do not take this student. They're a nightmare. So, that kind of information would possibly come in through a reference. So my advice is when you're asking for references, ask if the person can write a strong reference, not just can they write a reference. You know, if a student asks me, can you write a reference? I'm inclined to say yes, but if they say, can you write a strong reference? I say, give me all your stuff and let me look it over, and I'll let you know, because I don't keep that in my head. So, so that's been where the red flags have come for me. You know, transcripts, we all have common sense. If somebody got off to a really bad start and then they changed majors and that's why their GPA is low, we can see that and understand it. So we're not letter of the law on that. But if I look at someone's transcripts and their science grades are all C's, and they think they're going to come to Auburn and take these intense nutrition science courses, we have to have a conversation about that. Like, what happened? And do you really want to do this? Because we want you to be happy. You know, we want you to be in a good fit. So I guess that would be, I won't even call it a deal breaker, but, well, of course, you know, if it's lower than a C, you have to take it over. That is a deal breaker. But, you know, if you're on the margin there, maybe you have all A's in, you know, your fine arts and your humanities, but in the sciences you had a real struggle, then you probably don't want to have to, you know, put yourself through that. You might want to find a clinical nutrition master's.
So what is one area of the program that you're working on trying to make even better for the interns?
Well, we are always looking for new experiences and preceptors. You know, a lot of programs have a plethora of preceptors. We have enough to run the program, but we're new in that since we have dropped our clinical and we're focusing on community, public health and community, we're looking for more public health and community preceptors. So we have enough right now, but we don't want to burn them out. And we are looking for a wide variety of experience so students have a choice. So that's what I would say that we're doing is just continuing to expand the experiences and the preceptors.
All right. So my last question's a two-parter. And the first part is, what would you say are the three best adjectives, descriptors, phrases that you feel best describe the program?
I would have to use those adjectives to describe the students in the program, because they actually are the program. I say, you know, well-adjusted, intelligent, and I'll have to say kind. You know, when you're dealing with the community, you have to be all that. You can't be arrogant, and you have to have some humility, and especially cultural humility. You know, in the Deep South, there's all different ethnicities, and so we look for that. And then as far as the program, I would say that it's interesting, challenging, and rewarding. Yeah.
So would you say that those descriptors that you said about the students that you have now, would you say that those are the three best to describe like potential or perfect applicants that you would definitely want?
You know, I think human nature is a little more complex. Those happen to be the students that are attracted to our program. We didn't go out and try to find them. You know, I mentioned we haven't turned anyone away yet. And so that's who is attracted to Auburn. And we really like that. So, you know, and it's also hard to really know a person with one interview, you know, to know their real personality or their demeanor or their character. So, you know, we've had a student or two where they might have been a little bit rough around the edges, and so I won't say that we're looking for a perfect student, but those are some characteristics that we believe you need to work in the populations you're preparing to work in community and public health.
So with the interview that you're
Oh, the
mentioning,
interview.
is
Yeah,
it a
so
video interview in advance, or do you only interview finalists? How's that work?
we interview everybody that's qualified, and it's a phone interview. We did Zoom interviews at one point, but it's harder to set one of those up. You can talk on the phone pretty much from anywhere. And also in an attempt to blind ourselves to any type of bias or discrimination, I'd rather just talk on the phone. I don't even want to bias myself by seeing the person.
No, it makes a lot of sense, because I have heard other programs talk about how when they have the video portion, just viewing the person on video can sometimes create bias, or it makes it very hard to keep whoever's scoring the applicant, kind of keep it as even as possible when you can actually see who the person is.
Yeah,
you can't just leave their name off, because they're going to say their name in the video and you're going to see their face. So I think it's a good idea just to do that over the phone, because then it doesn't.
It's an unconscious bias that we're trying to. We have a very diverse faculty, and I won't say nobody has a very diverse internship because of the way the profession is. There's just not as much diversity as we need. But as much as possible, if you look at the picture of our class that we just graduated, we have quite a few different ethnicities represented. So it's unconscious bias that I'm guarding against. So I screen the applications. If they meet the minimum requirements, they get passed up to the graduate program officer, and just so that it's not one person making decisions, and the DPD director. So the three of us are a committee. We haven't had to exclude people. If we get to the point where we have to do that, we'll probably expand our committee just to make sure it is fair. So the teaching faculty looks at them too, and because they have to teach, and if they see someone that's likely to struggle in science, they're going to have a concern. So they get their input. But probably I would say at the end of the day, it's really mine and the graduate program officer who would rule somebody out at this point in our program. That can change though later.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to the students that we have with us. We have a question in the chat, and I believe what Macy means by her question is, maybe other than federal financial aid, what kind of aid options does Auburn have?
Okay, well, not as much as you would want. We don't have stipends or scholarships out of our department for master's level. We have a lot of PhD students, and so that's where the funds go when we do have funds to support students. You can, if you're an on-campus student, you can look for a graduate teaching assistant opportunity or graduate research opportunity across campus. So sometimes we'll have a student that gets one in biology or some other department. Again, all of those positions go to the PhD students in nutrition, but there are other opportunities on campus that you could get. Now, when you get to your rotations, though, you got a problem, because that's during the day. And so I would say that you're probably looking for a stipend, and that we don't have that.
And being that it's Alabama, the ALDA state affiliate does also have someone who's gotten one of those before. They do have a lot of scholarship opportunities. Yeah, they have them for grad students, interns, PhD students. So there's local scholarship stuff. You probably just have to look for.
And there is a website at Auburn where all the scholarship information is housed. So you can apply to other scholarships, but as far as nutrition goes, we don't have that in our department except for PhD students.
Well, I'll go ahead and ask a few of my backup questions that kind of came up as you were speaking. So if someone did take some time off before they decided to apply and they're above that 5 years, what would you prefer an applicant to do as far as recency goes? What would you want them to do?
That's a good question. I think, the biggest thing, it's always for the student's sake, okay? So if somebody's been out like for 10 years, which has happened, then, in fact, I'm working with somebody right now who that's the situation. So she's going to go back to her DPD director and her undergrad and ask that person what they would recommend to supplement the curriculum they took at that university. And I'm likely to agree with whatever that person says, because they're the ones that know what the curriculum was that they taught and what's different now. So, but I guess the biggest thing is going to always be MNT. That's where the changes are constant. And I would think the student would want to refresh their MNT if they could find an online course, which I think I saw one somebody wrote in the INDEP portal. But they could potentially, I'm just talking off the top of my head, so I don't want to speak out of turn and say something that we couldn't do. But even if they applied at Auburn as a non-degree seeking student and took MNT, there's no reason to have to redo the whole program, but that's where you're going to run into trouble if you're not current. And also you forget that, you forget how to calculate a hyperreal solution or, stuff. So that's what I would say. They could refresh their educational background.
And do you provide throughout the program or as part of the program one of the official exam reviews, or do you have your own process for making sure that the interns are getting a review on the information?
Well, so far, what has happened is each cohort has decided independently of me to go in together and get a Gene Inman set. Now, I require them to get that. It's not in our list of expenses, so we're not requiring them to do any certain one because people need different levels of review. So we recommend Gene Inman. I require everyone to do at least one and tell me which one it is and document it so I know they did it. And that's towards the end of the program. But what I've noticed is that the students group up and they share costs and share the Gene Inman review. So they'll pass it around and share it. But yeah, it's really important. I do have a list of quite a few that I give to them with the different, prices as much as I can update the price list. And there's some free apps and there's quite a few programs. So I do provide that to them, and so they're not just out on their own trying to find something.
All right. So if a student coming into your program knows that they would like to go on to get their PhD at another institution that may require thesis research in order to get in, is there an option for them to complete the thesis?
Sure. We just can't guarantee when they'll graduate, which is the biggest problem. As you know, we have to graduate people within 150% of the timeline. So that would put, if they were going to be there for a long time, that would put them outside that range. And so, if they're going to do that, I suggest they get an early start on it so that they're not there forever, because it's just a master's. You'll be there forever for your PhD, maybe. We weren't, but were we, Erin? But, so, yeah, you can do it. You can do a thesis if you want to.
Okay. Perfect. All right. And then I guess my last question, just to clarify, and I might have missed this, with the difference between the on-campus and the distance, When we use the term distance, are you meaning true distance and that they can be located anywhere?
True distance. That's a great question because I did forget to mention. So the on-campus students, I set up all the rotations. And we also have a dietetic internship coordinator who went through the program a couple years ago as a distance student. And we hired her to help the distance students with their affiliation agreements and preceptors. Now, the distance students have to get their own preceptors, but when they get in, they have 2 semesters to do that before they have to hit the field. And the first semester of field work is community, and it's really easier to get those affiliation agreements anyway. So we feel like we're giving people a pretty long time to get it set up. That said, we provide the students with the affiliation agreements. They're very short, 2 pages and then a signature page. They identify their preceptors and then provide that affiliation agreement to the preceptor. If there's a problem, then that's where our internship coordinator gets involved and then starts negotiating with our provost office and the facility to see what the problem is. If we can iron it out, we usually can, but it takes back and forth a couple times of redlining. So we don't expect a student to do that. The student just has to find the people that will mentor them and precept them, and then initiate they have to be the one that asks the preceptor to do it. And once if the preceptor has questions, at that point we can talk to them and communicate and answer any questions. But we don't know the preceptors in all these areas, so we can't, we don't have a database of the nation of preceptors. So, and then the on-campus students, these are preceptors we continually use, so I just schedule them. And then, it's the only time that a person has to be on campus is the first week of orientation. And that's just so for the students' benefit to be at Auburn, see Auburn, meet me personally, meet the professors they're going to have. And it's for their benefit. If there's an absolute hardship involved, we have let them Zoom in. It's just they're the ones that miss out.
Okay. So to close us out tonight, Donna, give us one last take-home message for potential applicants this year.
Potential applicants. It's the pendulum is swinging to your side of this supply and demand. It used to be a 50% match. It has swung a little bit towards your side. So I think I heard someone say, it might have been in your last podcast, Aaron, the example one, that it's more like 75% match. Okay, that 25% that doesn't match, part of that is because they're not qualified and they insist on trying anyway. By not qualified, I mean, someone with a 2.0 or just they don't meet the requirements of any program that they've identified, or even lower than that. So, but truly qualified applicants, it's going to be even a better match rate. So I would say that take your time to figure out where you will be happy. What do you want to learn the most? Do you want to learn clinical more? Do you want to learn, the nutrition science? Are you more interested in the science of it or the behavior? Truly find a program that you feel like you will fit, and try to get to know the director. I can't tell you how many people have said to me that they are so glad they interviewed because they just got a chance to get to know me, and it reduced their level of fear and apprehension of what it's going to be like. We're very student-centered, and we'll do anything we can to help our students. And that may or may not be true everywhere, especially if there's 50 students. So, pick the program that fits you, and don't be afraid of it, because it's going to be easier than it used to be to get in a program.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Burnett, for being with us this evening. And for those at home who are interested in the program at Auburn, I've provided a link to their program website in the description below this video. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode with another dietetic internship. And we'll see you next time.
War Eagle.
And a little roll tide.